Bus Safety Week, and remove the following items. 5.02, discuss the legislative package. 5.04, discuss the process for appointing community members for the Education Compact. 5.05, discuss revisions to the bylaws, Articles 1, 2, and 3. 5.06, receive reports from board members on external committees or board assignments. And I might add that documents for that item are posted to board docs. 8.03, receive for action a request to approve an instructional server lease. If there are no other changes, Madam Chair, the motion to amend.
I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing that we have none, the agenda has been amended as received.
The next item is 1.04, to approve the minutes of the October 2nd, 2017 meeting. And those minutes were sent out in advance, and we received no changes to those. So I just asked that you approve them, Madam Chair.
The minutes will be approved as received.
The next item is item 2, the closed session.
Pursuant to the Personnel Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, I move that the School Board of the City of Richmond convene in closed session 2, discuss prospective candidates for appointment for the interim 7th District School Board seat and performance of specific school board employees.
Second. It's been moved by Mr. Barlow and seconded by Ms. Green. Any discussion? Madam Clerk? Ms. Green.
Well, because of the audience here, it's here for the Richmond Ambulance Authority, if the will of the board, I'd like to move them to close so that they can leave after the presentation.
Madam Chair, I'd happily retract my motion.
Pleasure of the board, we will proceed with the recognitions first, then we move forward with the close.
So we are moving to recognitions, and we have a recognition for the Richmond Ambulance Authority and the Commonwealth University for the generous donation of lead kits to Richmond Public Schools.
Madam Chairman, school board members, the Richmond Ambulance Authority in conjunction with DCU won a grant. We're one of the first school systems in the United States where we'll be providing bleed kits into our schools. And it's something to be extremely proud of. Here tonight is Mr. Chip Decker and with the Richmond Ambulance Authority and Ms. Beth Boring with DCU. And I'd like to give them an opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. I'm Chip Decker. I'm CEO of the Richmond Ambulance Authority. And a little bit of history. We have a long history, if you will, of participating with Richmond Public Schools. And I'll bring just the more recent ones to your attention. In 2013, we realized that your athletics programs were paying for the ambulance to be on site at your football games. And so the Ambulance Authority's Board of Directors voted that I could no longer charge you for it. So you get it for free, and that goes on to this day. And so hopefully the athletic programs will, be able to get some other safety equipment or whatever they need for their programs. In 2014, the Ambulance Authority provided funding for 41 AEDs, automated external defibrillators, for all your schools and the athletic teams, so they would have those AEDs down on the field in case they were hopefully never ever needed. But and tonight we come before you with our latest venture to assist the Richmond Public Schools, and I'm joined with my Beth Boring from VCU Health and the Commerce Center, and I'll let her explain to you what this all entails.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having the opportunity and the privilege to work with the Richmond City Schools and public schools in the region, and in collaboration with Richmond Ambulance Authority. I'm Beth Boring. I'm the director of the VCU Trauma Center, VCU Health. So we have formed a partnership with Richmond Ambulance Authority, and we feel it's extremely critical that the teachers, the security personnel, and the health officers in your schools, the school nurses or other professionals in your schools, all have the skills and the equipment and the knowledge to help with children or parents or anyone that may be injured in whether it's a natural or a man-made disaster, and help save lives as a part of this. So we have, through some grant process with the Auxiliary Foundation at VCU Health, and some other grants, and then some funding from VCU Health, we've been able to purchase these bleeding control kits to outfit about 35 of the schools, and we're working to develop a way to make sure that every school here has one of these bleeding control kits. So each one of the kits has tourniquets. It has what we call quick clot gauze, which is bleeding control gauze. It has a stop the bleed or a medication on it, so that if a person were bleeding, you apply that gauze to it. To the wounds to help control the bleeding and to help slow down and get so that patient or that child or family member can get to definitive care at a hospital. And so more importantly, not only do we want to make sure that we give you the equipment and provide the equipment in case of such an emergency, but we also want to make sure that the professionals in your organizations and in the schools can also know how to use that equipment correctly. So we started out with some of the school nurses and the security officers, and our goal is to be able to train a lot of the instructors as well and teachers in your schools.
Thank you.
On behalf of the board, I would like to thank you both for all that you do for our students as well as our student athletes. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
Madam Chairman, school board members, I've got 3 awards here tonight, or recognitions, from the Virginia School Board Association, award of recognition for your commitment to effective school board governance through your participation in the VSBA School Board Academy 2016-2017 for Ms. Linda Baker Owen. Dr. Patrick Sapini. And Ms. Felicia Cosby. you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And we'd like to congratulate each of you for these accolades. And for those of you in the audience who may not be aware, the Virginia School Board Association is a part of our professional development. It's very important as a part of the work that we do. So again, congratulations. Next item.
Madam Chair, you need to be read into closed again. One motion, sorry.
Pursuant to the Personnel Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, as amended, I move that the school board of the City of Virginia convene in closed session to discuss prospective candidates for appointment to the interim 7th District School Board seat and performance of specific school board employees.
I second.
It's been moved by Mr. Barlow and seconded by Ms. Owen. We're now in close. I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now in close.
If somebody speaks up, does media have to stay back here?
We will adjourn to the side room. You have to
each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting, which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Richmond School Board.
It's been moved by Mr. Barlow and seconded by Ms. Cosby.
Ms. Lewis? Yes. Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby? Yes. Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes,
Motion passes 8-0.
we're now in open. So, board members, what is your pleasure for moving the item A on 8.01? Is it your pleasure to move the item on your agenda? Madam Clerk?
Chairman, did you have time for public comment and I missed it? I'm on the agenda for that, but it didn't show up there.
Public information session will come after the vote. The board just, by consensus, is going to move one item up, and then we will have public information.
Come on now.
No. The next item is to approve the interim appointment of the 7th District candidate. Is there a motion?
I so move.
To,
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that we appoint Cheryl Burke to the interim representative for the 7th District to the school board.
The second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Warren and seconded by Ms. Cosby to approve the interim appointment of the 7th District candidate, Ms. Cheryl Burke. Any discussion? Or question?
Ms. Dorr? Yes. Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cosby? Yes. Ms. Owen? Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0 to appoint Ms. Burke as the interim 7th District candidate. I'm sorry, board member. The next item is public information, and I do have several members who signed up in advance. What is your pleasure, Madam Chair?
You can move forward with the community members that have signed up for public information period. If you're speaking as an individual, you have 3 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of a group or organization, you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Bill LaFoon? We will call the names of the speakers who signed up according to how they signed up before to speak.
Please make sure you sign in, sign your name, and state your name.
Hi, my name is Bill Buffoon. I'm a resident. I work in the city. And I hear a lot that you're data-driven. Maybe you have a handout that was left with the clerk. If you don't have it, it's pretty easy to find. Developing countries have made a connection between education and prosperity. PISA is an organization that evaluates over 500,000 students from 70 countries. Those students are 15 years old. These developing countries are concerned about how they fit into modern society. The last test tested over 3 years. The last test was 2015. In reading, the U.S. finishes behind Poland, Estonia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. In science, the U.S. finishes behind Vietnam, Canada, Portugal, and Korea. In mathematics, the U.S. finishes behind Latvia, Malta, Iceland, and Spain. And that's good news and bad news. The bad news is that where the United States was on top at one time, at the top of the heap, they're down the ladder now, somewhere 25. This assessment got started because these developing countries are really concerned about how they compete in the world. And the good news is that all these, so to speak, if you look over time for this testing, these impoverished countries have moved up the ladder ahead of the United States. So that's, in a sense, that's good news, because one of the things that I always hear from schools is, our problem is we can't teach kids because they're all poor. And that's simply not the case. It's, you can't blame it on the poor kids. If you want to find out how to do it, maybe ask the poor kids in Vietnam, Portugal, Malta, how they scored compared to the U.S. So I think you should take this, you can't blame your failure on poor kids. Now, I'm data-driven myself, and you may have heard of Proposition A. It's on the ballot this year, and I'm on a research committee. At this point, we have one school board member that is on the record for their position on Proposition A. I'd like to leave this with the clerk. And it can be picked up later. If you're in support of Proposition A, please sign it. It's just part of data collection and research. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Robert Albright.
Madam Chairperson, members of the school board, Mr. Crown, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I've come here to speak to you about the walking zone at the Oak Grove Belmead School. In public hearing 6 years ago, the Oak Grove Belmead School was described as a 21st century community-based school with walking and biking in mind. The zone was created for walking and biking. There are over 238 signatures that were secured by Hillside Court community that were signed to promote their kids coming to the Oak Grove School and making the pledge that they would walk. The other recommendation from the rezoning committee was 3 of the options were to bus the kids to Blackwell. That's not what the community wanted. They wanted to walk to the new school. I'm an advocate for our children walking and biking to school. 85% of our children live within a third of a mile from the school, and the infrastructure is there to make that happen. I know there will be pushback when the school board is evaluating rezoning, closing schools, enforcing walking zones. Pushback will and can be expected, but that's what we expect you to do, to be able to handle that pushback. I'm not here, I'm going to make that clear, I'm not here representing the Oak Grove Belmead administration, because if you ask the administration, they don't want to see this happen. The main reason is they're concerned about increasing of absenteeism and tardiness. Research doesn't prove that that's so. I've prepared information packets for each board member that details the last 6 years of study and work that the community's done. I ask you to read and study the materials, and I feel you will reach the conclusion that you can't justify the expense of continuing transportation. We are a priority school. and what will help us become accredited bus drivers or science teachers. On a separate note, I would encourage you to look no further than Tommy Krantz as our next superintendent. I have known and worked with Mr. Krantz for the last 4 years. I find him to be approachable, candid, honest, hardworking to a fault, and a true leader. He has earned the respect of his staff, principals, teachers, and our community. You may not always like what he says, but he's going to tell you and not sugarcoat reality. Many times in organizations, we look for a silver bullet to come in and solve our problem. That person doesn't exist. If we go outside, we're going to lose 2 years, and I don't feel like we have 2 years to waste. I feel there's no downside in giving Mr. Krantz a well-deserved opportunity.
Time.
We'll leave these packets for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathleen Moran.
Ms. Collins, you are just microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Draymond.
Good evening, Council. I'm City Council, School Board. My name is Kathleen Moran, and I'm here before you tonight because I have been trying since June. I have a 5-year-old that I have custody of, and I have to get him to school. I talked to Ms. Donaldson. I have talked to Ms. Page, liaison. I have talked to Ms. Newbill. I have talked to this intern superintendent, and I have talked to Mr. Miles. Nobody can seem to help me. I am on a walker. I have to be on 4 liters of oxygen 24 hours of a day. This is a must in my lung condition that I have right now. I have had this since 2015. I had asthma, I had a house fire, and my body went all out of whack. I have tried, I can't depend on somebody else to help me get this young man to school. So I pushed myself. One day I came out on my ramp and I fell because it was raining. And thank God that I had the energy to get up. But I have been fighting this situation since June to try to get somebody to get this bus to stop at 2300 Hardwood Street in Midhaven. That is the corner house. I take my oxygen and I move it around in my house because I have to have it. I can sit on my porch and watch my child get on the bus and get off. The bus stop is at I think it's 2200 at Overlook and Hardwood, which is a block up past my house. Before it was designated, I asked, could it be done through everybody that I have asked. I even called the person that's over the APA for the schools. She never called me back. The system is set up if my child if my child had some type of handicap, they would stop there. But I'm the parent, and I have to get my child to school. It's my responsibility to get him to school. I don't have a problem with rules and regulations, but at this point, I cannot, if it's snow, sleet, or rain, what am I to do? The law will come after me if I don't get him to school. What am I to do? I'm coming before you tonight because I don't know where else to turn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Smith.
greetings from the 17th century, more specifically, the early 17th century, and even more specific than that, the year 1619, which is the year the first college in America was founded by the General Assembly that met at Jamestown, and they indicated specifically that the campus would be up here at the fall line on the north side of the river, 10,000 acres, all of which today, or almost all of which today is in Henrico County. And I came here tonight to say hello and invite you to something. Coming up is the 400th anniversary of America's education system. Same thing, so the college was only part of that. They had a series of prep schools along the James River, more in planning than in actuality. The college and then the graduates of both of those would go to the university. Those times, that's a big idea, not very well known. I used to work at Jamestown Island in the church down there, and we didn't say anything about the education system at all, none of the printed material. So we brought this institution back into existence 25 years ago this year to talk about the primary source documents is what our focus is. And so that big pencil, you know, when you have a big idea, you got to capture that thing, get it written down before it goes away. Well, to help you with your big ideas, that's what that big pencil is for. It also is our invitation to you for the 400th anniversary coming up in 2019. There's going to be worldwide attention to things that happened in 1619 that are being celebrated in 2019. And the one I'm most interested in, of course, is education. And they're going to be looking from all over the world at how America does its education and what we're doing with it now. And you can see on that handout, sometime I'll come back and we'll talk more in detail about that. But right now I call your attention to the last item, which is the 400th anniversary. America's worldview wars, we're titling this, because we've had lots of discussions and actual fights, armed conflict, and arguments and debates about exactly what is America supposed to be, and particularly how do we know these things. So that's it when I'm talking about the educational agendas, and we'll be talking about a number of them all during from now till through the 2019 event. And what I want to do tonight, beyond that, beyond inviting you to come, is to ask you, would you identify someone on this board to work with us to be sure Richmond is included in this, because you're part of the campus right here at the fall line, and to help us give a response to what's happening with education. And all I'm going to say right now, tonight, you don't have to appoint whoever that is right this second, but at some point pretty soon I would like to have somebody to be able to work with to represent the board on this. The second piece of paper attached there is the action of the Virginia General Assembly in 1994 and 1995, which revised the Code of Virginia to require the public schools, all of them at whatever level, to teach the 1606 First Virginia Charter and its extensions in 1609 and 1612. That was our initiative. That's part of the reason we brought the college back into existence, was to have this kind of thing being given that kind of attention. We are already being asked, how are the schools divisions up near where the campus was for that original college? By the way, the original college turned into William and Mary, if you want to know what happened to it. Okay. Same schools, organized the same way and all that. But I'm being asked about the counties, Henrico County, Chesterfield County, and of course the city of Richmond. How are these school systems meeting that requirement in the law, teach the Virginia charters? I don't know. But we're going to be looking at this, and I want to come back and deal with that in some specific way later on. I won't try to take that time now. I know we got a limitation here. So
I think I'll stop right there unless you have a question or something. We look forward to seeing you 2019 or before. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bernice Travers. Bernice Travers. Madam Chair, that concludes the list of speakers that signed up in advance.
If we have any other members in the audience that would like to come forward at this time, please do so. Please be reminded, if you're speaking as an individual, you have 3 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of an organization or a group, you have 5 minutes. Please sign in and state your name.
Good evening, Mr. Krantz, Ms. Page, Dr. Stapini, and school board members. My name is A. Ramon Moore, and I'm the president of the Richmond Education Association. I stand before you tonight to invite all school board members to attend a monthly meeting of the Richmond Education Association. I do look forward to meeting with each school board members personally and the representative of the school board for REA. Let me note that the mark has been set high by our interim superintendent, Mr. Tommy Krantz. He attended our first meeting in September. Members were so honored and really enjoyed their time with Mr. Krantz. We stand in unity as the official education association for Richmond Public Schools. Stay tuned for more information from the Richmond Education Association. But before I leave, I will be remiss if I did not thank the following members for coming out their busy schedules today. They're seated on the last 2 rows on my right, my left, your right. Julita Freeman, Deborah Blackwell, Portia Foster, Ingrid Higgins, and Angela Dews, just to name a few, and I look forward to working with each and every one of the school board members. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Ansley Perkins. There are several large and significant issues that this board has to resolve. Among them is a facilities plan. The ad hoc committee was to meet last week, and I believe we're scheduled to meet today. I don't know if that meeting did in fact happen. It is already the middle of October, and it appears unlikely that a decision on any plan will be made before next month at the earliest. It also appears unlikely that the Education Compact will have the time needed in this budget cycle to make any meaningful recommendations to this board, city council, and the mayor. Continuing to delay on a facilities plan and recommendations for such a plan puts all of us in the same stuck place that we have been for years and years, and we are quickly running out of Band-Aids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, Vice Chair, and board members, my name is Charles Willis, for those that don't know. And I'm here to say thank you for your choice of choosing Ms. Cheryl Burke as the representative for the 7th District. I think it was one of the best choices you could ever make, just like the choices that were made to vote you in the seats that you are in today. So again, I'm not going to be long, which I know y'all surprised on that. But I come to say thank you and to let you know I no longer have a problem with Ms. Burke. All right? I no longer have a problem as I did 2 weeks ago. Thank you again, and God bless you.
Thank you. If we don't have any other members in the audience who would like to come forward at this time, this concludes our public information period. Next item.
The next item is item 5, board business, 5.01, receive a presentation highlighting the school modernization referendum.
Ms. Lewis. Welcome, Mr. Bowman.
Dawn, how you doing? Can I start?
Yes.
Appreciate the opportunity. I hope you've had a chance to read. I put out something at Chairwoman's request that sort of answers some questions that were sort of silly questions floating around. If you have any comments or anything on that, be happy to further elucidate. It's somewhat interesting, you know. Well, I didn't get all the 15,000 signatures. I did get a lot of them. And of course, other people were around talking about it. And it wasn't political with the votes. So many people said to me, well, this is a no-brainer. But obviously, it has seemed to create some controversy, which somewhat befuddles me. I'll be frank about it. Let me tell you why. In 1955, the Supreme Court of the United States in Brown II made it absolutely clear that any problems associated with the facilities that interfered with the educational rights of the children had to be corrected before the state of Virginia could be considered in compliance with the Brown I decision. I don't know how we managed to get in compliance when we have the facility situation that we have, which has been known, and which there are eminent scholars, including Professor Earthman at Virginia Tech. Actually, Bill Clinton talked about it 20 years ago, and before that, saying that the state of the facilities could damage a student severely, statistically. If you take the same student and send them to good facilities, obviously this is a projection, and took the same student and sent them to the facilities that we're here in Richmond. It isn't just Richmond, the average school building in America is obsolete. They would lose an entire year of learning. Now think about that. One student graduates after 12 years with 12 years. Same student, same courses, old schools, only 11th grade education. Now they have to carry that for life. And that is really the basis of the school referendum. We're adults. We have time, well, we'll get around to it, we'll get around to it. But the students don't have that luxury. Every year you wait, you damage it. At some point, after 62 years, somebody has to at least say, isn't it about time to sort of come up with a plan? Now I hear everybody saying, well, we have all these plans. Well, what do we have? There's been one plan in the last 20 some odd years that's actually put in money for some new school buildings. That's the plan I created for Mayor Wilder. That's where Mr. Jones got the money and switched around the plans. If the plan that we had passed had been implemented, George Mason would already be modernized. All right, I see where I think Mr. Pryor put something out about there was only 4 schools. Well, let's understand something. That was just not a plan. That also fixed the libraries. You've seen the libraries fixed up? That's out of the same plan. No taxes. They don't have to raise any taxes. It was a $300 million plan, not just for schools, could have been. So I'm not up here to tell anybody to do anything they haven't already done. At some point, you have to actually commit to a plan that will fully modernize the schools for every student. That was, we were working on that. That was, I left, and they sort of forgot about what we wanted to do, and the new mayor and the new school board, or actually the new council, are on their own way. But what the referendum's trying to do, for the first time, is come up with a plan, actually a process, that will guarantee that every child, not just a couple of lucky childs, just happen to be in the place where they get a new school. Every student deserves, based on the Brown 2 decision and just common sense, a modernized facility capable of teaching a 21st century education. And after 62 years, it would seem we ought to all be prepared to come up with something fast, not slow. Now, everybody in 2016 ran on the fact, just about everybody, we're going to come up with a plan, which means you talked about it, I assume, in 2015 to yourselves. It's now almost 2018. Is there a plan? I don't see one. I see a wish list. I want a fully funded plan to do it. I don't see it. So the fact that 15,000 people are frustrated, and I could have got 30,000. I would assume they would be that way. What I don't understand is we hear all the talk about a compact and this, there's no plan from anybody. There's no plan to even come up with a plan. Well, there's talk. You know, I was talking with somebody, I won't mention the name, some aides that somebody might have heard of, and they said, well, you know, everybody knows we have a plan. And I said, well, let me just ask you the question that Tom Cruise sort of asked Jack Nicholson in its own way. Just got one question for you. If everybody knows you all have a plan, why did 15,000 people sign a petition asking you to produce a plan that supposedly they already know you have? There is no plan. We don't even have a wish list right now. That's coming.
Excuse me, Mr. Goldman.
Uh-huh.
We want a tight time constraint tonight. Thank you for the presentation, but we want to give board members at this time if they have any questions.
Absolutely.
Mr. Young?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if I have an inquiry for Mr. Goldman, but rather a statement. And I would concur that the public should be frustrated. They should be more than frustrated. They should be demanding, absent something done, recall of yours truly and my colleagues, absent some significant change as it relates to our facilities. And I'm just glad that somebody in this town has taken an initiative to go out there and motivate persons to convey their frustration. And I look forward to this board moving very expeditiously to consolidate schools, the right size, to leverage all the tools in our toolbox, and to making a significant improvement in our facilities for the purpose of our customers.
And what the referendum does is finally give people some hope. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. I pointed that out. There's other things by setting some deadlines. That's what you do. You actually have to do something. When, you know, I remember helping Wilder, and everybody wanted to do it. You had to come up with a plan to actually break the code. You just can't talk about it. We wanted an elected mayor. The people voted in 1996, and the legislature killed it. So I came up with a way to make sure it happened. You got to eventually do it. 63 years is a long time to just talk.
So do we have any other questions for Mr. Bowman? Ms. Cosby?
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I do have a question because we get questions all the time, and there is some confusion.
I understand.
About the referendum.
Yes, ma'am.
And especially when we start talking about paying 1
what it does is something that's Warner, Wilder, I help them draft how they do stuff. They're always agree and they did. The way you do it is, first, you have to show people that you're using the money that they've already given you wisely. I don't know any city that's running a surplus that ever got a tax increase, because if you got more money than you say you need, you're going to come back for even more. First thing, you got to show people that you're a good steward of the money that you have. At which point, which is what the referendum does, it sets up a process. At which point you come back and say, look, you know us, we tried, we looked at it, we need more money, and here's why. You just don't come in and say, let's assume this Dr. Krantz comes in with a $600 million facilities thing, $500 million, which is only the construction cost. It doesn't go to the actual cost because you're going to deficit finance. So what are you going to do, ask them for $800 million in new taxes? It's just not the way things work. So that's all it does. Then the mayor, that's why we have a mayor, presents the plan. He says, I can't do it without taxes. And then he asks for whatever he wants to ask for. And Mark Warner did the same thing when he was governor. Wilder looked at it and says they don't need taxes. That's up to them. But they showed that they were good stewards of the money. That's all this does. In terms of Kane Warner, that's a federal legislation that goes to the historic tax credits. So that's on a different level.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Bowman, I'd like to thank you for this information. And board members, you have a document.
Question.
Yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Zerb.
Just, could you just give a little bit more clarification to the question around taxes? So help us understand why the language is in there in the first place, if ultimately the mayor can go back and say, we're gonna raise taxes anyway. I just wanna understand the wording choice.
Well, there are sort of several reasons. It's not just one. I have done this before. And what tends to happen in things, if you start, don't mention taxes, everybody thinks, oh, this is just a plan to raise my taxes. And once you start talking taxes, everybody forgets about what the real substance is and they start wondering about stuff. So I was anticipating that. Number two, I think one of the reasons that we haven't been able to come up with a plan yet is I don't think people understand how you have to do it. You just don't talk about raising taxes. Most people don't like their taxes raised. You can take a poll and say, oh, I'll pay tax. And I can tell you how many times we did this. We did it with Warner. Oh, we're willing to do this. We're willing to raise taxes for transportation. And we couldn't do it. Because once you start going through the details and everything, you'll find out, well, I thought you were going to tax somebody else. So what you try to do, what this thing does simply, is to try to get a bipartisan, which we have, coalition to give everybody a mandate to go out and solve the problem. You never get a voter mandate. When you run for office, you may be running on 10 different issues. They don't know which one they elected you on. This is a clear mandate to solve the problem. And what it says is, we're going to try to solve them. This isn't a way to just raise your taxes or cut anything. We're going to first show you that we're using the money correctly, and then if we need more money, we're going to come back and we're going to tell you why. It's clear to everybody, 15,000 people, but for some reason the pals want to try to read any little thing into it. It doesn't take, I think, as I said here, it doesn't take away anybody's power. It doesn't add to anybody's power. It tries to give you something you need, a public mandate to do something that's hard. It's taken 63 years. If it was easy, it already would have been done.
Do we have any other questions at this time? If not, Mr. Barlow.
Thanks for coming out, Mr. Goldman. Appreciate it.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. And I was encouraged to have been able to vote for your historic tax credit legislation.
I think it's good. That's good.
I think so too, and I'm hopeful that with that type of legislation passing, these types of plans may be easier to fund with that.
They don't count on too much from the Trump
Fair enough.
era, though.
I haven't held out much hope for.
Well, we're trying.
Hey, but we'll see. My big concern is, and I do think that most of us were elected, or feel that we were elected with a mandate to get a facilities plan together and to work to get it funded. So I'm encouraged that this referendum is an opportunity to build on that discussion. My only concern at this point is with regard to the language about the tax increase. And I think you've done a great job of explaining tonight that of course we can raise taxes if we need to. It's about making sure our house is in order. But I just want to make sure that when we're making public statements that as a board, watching out for RPS, that I don't want to find ourselves in a situation where folks are under the impression that that we think that we will necessarily be able to succeed and really renovate the schools and come up with a facilities plan that our students truly deserve without exploring those types of avenues. And of course, my impression is that, you know, after this first phase, we'll move on to that. I just want to make sure that there isn't confusion. I intend to continue to advocate.
Several things to it. It's only an advisory referendum. This is not California where you can go pass a law. It's an advisory referendum. And one of the reasons it was put into there, I think by Frank Hall and some other folks, is because the public had voted before for some things and the General Assembly just didn't even bother to consider it. So it frustrated the public. But there's nothing in there, if you read the language, there's no, as I pointed out, there's no legal problem. If there was a legal problem, the circuit, don't you think the judges of the Circuit Court of Richmond can figure it out pretty good? And there's no legal problem, they put it on the ballot. It doesn't take away any power. You can, now the school board doesn't have power to raise taxes anyway. So it doesn't really matter what you all want to do, it's up to the council. It doesn't take away any power from the council. What it does do is give you something that you really don't have. You think you have a mandate to fix the schools, but what you don't really have that, because this tells you that the public puts that a lot higher. It puts that at the best. It is the first time they will say to you, we want this fixed. And don't think they don't understand that there may be some sacrifices involved, as they're concerned. But they're willing to join together. Think of the coalition we had. People in the West End and people already on the other side of the river. You don't normally see a political coalition that way. Everybody's on board for this. And you're going to need them because ultimately they're probably going to ask people for some sacrifice, and that's generally when things fall apart. Oh, I didn't think we had to do that. So you got to bring people along slowly, in my opinion, and I've been able to do that and made some history learning that the hard way. You move too fast, they're for you, but you know, they're not going to move with you. And I think this is a measured way. That's me, obviously. It's my view. I could be wrong, of course.
So, Mr. Goldman, again, thank you. And the board members, if you have additional questions for Mr. Goldman, please feel free to
Thank you.
offline. And right now, our student representative has to leave because he has to get ready for school the next day. And Mr. Terry, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We truly appreciate it. And good luck.
As always, it's been an honor to be with you all. And I wish you all the best.
Wish you the best. And Mr. Thompson, thank you. And do we have any other family members here with Mr. Terry? The principal, thank you again.
Okay. Next item. The next item is 5.03, receive a presentation from Hazard Young and Atia.
Good evening, board. Thank you. I'm going to turn this right over to Tom Farrell. I've been working with him very closely on this search. He is part of the search committee, but I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll let him come up and tell his part of the story, and then I'll come back after he finishes. It's been a pleasure working with Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Traeger and Mr. Farrell. Thank you for being here.
Madam Chair, thank you. If the school board is prepared to go through the names of individual candidates, which I think would need to be an executive session. So I don't know what your pleasure is. I can take you through the process we have followed, which I think would be perfectly appropriate to be an open session.
Like an overall summary.
Yeah.
Special executive session.
What do you want me to do? I can take you through the process we followed today. And not talk about anybody individually. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for having me here tonight. Just to refresh members of the school board, you appointed a committee of 27 individuals. I worked with a lot of forums, but I've never worked with a committee of 27. And I must admit to you, I was a little anxious about that. When I first was in, Dawn called me to say, hey, we've got a great committee for you. I said, that's fantastic. How many folks are on? She said 27. So I was anxious about that, but I have come to two conclusions. I have to admit that your decision to impanel a very large group which represented all aspects of the Richmond community was very wise. I think it led to really outstanding deliberations by a group of very wonderful individuals. And the second one is that your individual choices that you put on this committee were exceptional. And they acted in an extraordinarily professional way, very dedicated to the Richmond public school system, to the city of Richmond. We found throughout our meetings that we had a lot of things in common, many things in common, but one thing rose to the top above all else, which was that we were all absolutely dedicated to one thing, making sure that we gave you the very best options available to serve as our next superintendent. When the appropriate time comes, Madam Chair, I'll take you through that. So the process, you all first appointed, the school board appointed a separate committee to hire the search firm. We went through that process, sat on that committee, as the member of the school board and others. You picked a very good search firm. The committee recommended a good search firm. You hired a very good search firm. Hired Tia, Brad Rader led that effort. When we had our first meeting, our organization meeting was in July. We all agreed to a number of things, one of which was the critical nature of confidentiality in the process. All of us signed a form. I have a copy here if anybody wants to see the form. It's perfectly public document, became more public as we went through that process. But everybody was convinced of the critical nature of confidentiality in this process to make sure that the very best candidates make themselves available to the search committee and through the search committee make themselves available to the school board for consideration. And that, we saw that play out actually through the process. Now, our next meeting, after that meeting, we reviewed the process. Brad Rader came, told us what role they were going to play. And we asked him to make sure that he brought the very best candidates to us so that we could winnow them down and present them to you all for consideration. And we also asked the members of the search committee to bring us their very best recommendations, and many did. We had another meeting in September. We wanted to give the search firm time to do a lot of recruiting, checking, et cetera. Had an update on the progress of our search. We set dates to review resumes and potential interview candidates. That process we went through on October 4th. And at this point, we then went into some interview process. And at this point, I think I should stop speaking because the rest of it would fall under, I think, an exemption to the Freedom of Information Act. You should be held in a private session.
Board members, do you have any questions about the process at this time?
Well, I just want to echo some of what Mr. Farrell said. When he told me 27 members, I almost said, well, let's find a new search consultant. I have to agree, the passion in the room for finding the best in Richmond was unbelievable. The commitment of time, I don't think we had anybody late, we didn't have anybody with a phone ringing. I mean, this is just, I have to say, I've never seen it work this well. The confidentiality has been kept, and I think we have a great process moving forward from here. So I want to thank Mr. Farrell, I want to thank 27 other people, because it was an experience I'll never forget, and I will certainly speak of very highly for Richmond and for other divisions. So you did a great job in picking that committee. Thank you. There are three of our members in the audience here. Please, please stand. And I heard the niece's name called earlier. Thank you all. Not me, no. So I think Ms. Moore has a question, comment? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well, first, just a comment, I want to thank you for stepping up to lead the committee and for your time, and to all the committee members for dedicating their time to this really important process, so we are very appreciative. And I'm not sure if I'm able to ask this, but you can cut me off. But I was wondering, of the candidate pool, approximately what is the breakdown from people that applied just because they saw the job posting versus people that came to us from warmly?
It would be my preference to take you through all of that detail. And I have all that detail. Ms. Baldwin.
Mr. Farrell, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the other search committee members who are here this evening, and to all those who served on the panel. I'm really excited to see the results and to make sure that we use an awesome superintendent. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you. Brad, thank you. Tom, thank you so much. The committee, search committee members that are here right at this moment, just thank you for your time, and thank you for your willingness to assist in this process to help us find the next leader of RPS. At this time, I would like to ask the board, what is your pleasure? We can move forward with the items on the agenda or move into let's continue with is the pleasure to continue with the agenda items, or
It shouldn't take too long.
so we just move forward with the agenda items, and then we will go into close. Next. I also want to inform everyone that the school board will have a closed meeting for the purpose of interviewing candidates for the superintendent position at an undisclosed location within 15 days. Next item.
The next item is 6, administration business. 6.01, discuss overall leveling of the school division.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. I have before you tonight a couple pages of information to start a discussion whatever direction the board would like to go about how we went through our leveling process this year. And as we're passing that information out, I'll give you a couple of statistics. The bulk of our leveling occurred at the secondary level, and we could talk about why. We had 58 positions that needed to be leveled, not including 27 special education positions. The 58 that needed to be leveled in the regular education classrooms, none of those included any filled positions. Those were all from vacancies. The 27 did include a combination of filled and vacant positions. The filled positions, by and large, were moved with the students themselves, or certainly with the specific disabilities. Before we continue about any of the positions, I would like to direct your attention to the second page, and you'll see that that is the kindergarten through third grade staffing standards that is part of the standards of quality. We, for years and currently, are participating in this program. You'll see at the bottom of the page on the very far right, for the 18 school year, there's a maximum available to us of $6.9 million. We budgeted about $5.2 million, understanding that we won't hit every single one of these targets, but what we have done is we have added about 9 positions to our complement as a result of being able to move more towards the $6.9 million instead of roughly $5.2 million. The reason I wanted to start there is I expect there'll be some discussion about how do we determine staffing levels and staffing at each school. So at the elementary level, this is what guides us and has guided us for a very long time. These staffing ratios, as you can see, are extremely low, and they're extremely low specifically because of our composition of students. If we look at the overall standards of quality, the staffing ratios that are funded by the state are significantly higher than this. And if you look at other school divisions around the state, specifically in this region, you'll see that the kindergarten through third grade staffing standards for them are much higher than this. So I had said that we had 58 regular education positions, the bulk of them at the secondary level. And I think all of you know that the transient nature of our student population at the secondary level, so it is very hard to predict which students are going to show up in which schools and in which programs in September versus in January and February when those schedules are developed and their choices are requested. So this is a process for us that's very manual. We don't have a silver bullet. We don't have a sophisticated program. What we do is we call the schools, we go to the schools, we count heads, we talk with the teachers, we talk with principals, and we follow up and we verify that information and ASPEN, which is our student information system. This process goes on several times over about a 3-week period at the beginning of school. I think if we, I certainly can't speak for every principal, but I do think that I can speak in a general way. If we talk with our schools across the board, you'll see that our principals are very pleased with their staffing levels across the board. So I'll pause and see if there's any particular direction that the board would like to go, or I certainly will be happy to take any individual questions outside of this evening.
Ms. Jordan and Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. So when does leveling occur? Remind me when leveling occurs, and just for the purposes of the recording / audio, can you just give a brief one sentence about what leveling is?
I certainly can. Obviously, just like every other school division, we shut our schools down sometime in June, and we know which students are in our schools and in which classes in June. The big question is, are they going to be the same students that show up in September? So we try to work with our principals and ask them to keep their finger on the pulse of communities to see if they know of any big influx or outflow of students. If they have folks that are coming to their buildings talking about, I'm registering students or I'm withdrawing students. So leveling means staffing classrooms based on the actual classes offered. At the elementary level, that's pretty straightforward. The secondary level, that's very much dependent on the master schedule. So leveling means making sure we have a appropriate number of teachers in each school and in each class to meet the demand for our students. By and large, that happens pretty much when school starts. I will say this year, my remembrance was there were only 2 positions that were moved in July, and probably no more than 6 that were moved up until about the last week of August. Last week of August, we had principals that started coming to us. We were going to them, and they were saying, look, I know I'm going to have, the easier ones are kindergarten, first grade. You got a better feel because a lot of the parents come and register their kindergarten students. So, but by and large, this happens again. A lot of this because I don't want to misquote a matriculation rate, but of the students that start in a particular school at a secondary grade, there's a much lower percentage of those students that finish in that same school that matriculate to the next year in Richmond than our surrounding neighbors. So that makes that number pretty hard to estimate. Mr. Krantz, with his background in numbers and statistics, asked several times, could we estimate it? And we certainly attempted to. While 58 positions may seem like an awful lot, based on how many teachers we hire each year, that's really not that much. And I will segment this population by saying, if you look at this, a large number of these positions, excuse me, are at 4 schools. George Wythe, Huguenot, and we know we shifted part of the populations at George Wythe and Huguenot. We did that well after all those schedules were made. So we had to keep those staffs whole, so we didn't move any live bodies. We also had a large adjustment at Bouchard because of the influx of certain students that moved into that zone, and also at Brown, I think a combination of students and new staff there. So I'll pause and see if that answers your question.
So was it, I was told that it was kind of fallish, end of September, October when leveling happens. I guess just one comment. I experienced with several teachers, both in my district or several principals, both in my district and outside of the district, that had requests, knew their kindergarten numbers or knew some of their school information in advance of the fall. I guess my comment would just be, what some of the responses that I received, not from you, but was, oh, we don't do leveling until the fall. Where we have good information, I just would encourage us to see if we can be a little bit more proactive so that we don't disrupt, especially kindergarten classes where parents have, a lot of them, it's their first impression of RPS. Let's, not move them around September 15th. Let's try and do that in August. So I had 3 situations this year where that happened. So thank you. I think I've heard that the start of school has been very smooth this year generally, so I'm not saying this is a criticism, but in general, I think we just need to have a little bit of flexibility around policies where it makes sense.
Well, thank you, and actually, if it's okay, I would like to continue it just a little bit. One of the things that school systems can do is look at staffing and determine that you're overstaffed in a particular area and physically move that teacher. That's something that we have not done. So we did have tried to take the approach of filling that need as quickly as we can identify it. But at this snapshot in time, we've not moved any teachers. So if somebody started with a teacher this year, we didn't move that teacher out and put that teacher in another school.
Ms. Owen?
Mr. Meyer, I have a couple of questions. It's interesting to me that we're talking about a 3-year average free lunch eligibility percentage. I didn't think we were still collecting that information, that people are filling out those forms because we just give everybody a free lunch. So how do we know that it's 84% at Green and 59% at Southampton?
Yes, ma'am, that's a good question. These are the targets that we would have to be at to qualify for this funding. We are clearly above these percentages.
But I'm really curious because I have heard, for instance, at Southampton, that you've got 22 is absolutely the largest permitted class size, and that means kindergarten can't be at 23. But 22 is a lot for kindergarten. And I'm just kind of curious as to how we know that we don't have 80% at Southampton or 85% at Reed. I mean, how do we know that that's how many are eligible for free lunch when we don't ask them anymore?
I'm going to let Mr. Krantz jump in 1 second from a food service perspective, but I will share with you that the state actually issues free and reduced percentages even when 100% of your students qualify. They still issue these percentages. Sorry.
It ends up, Ms. Owen, it ends up being an average because the last year that we collected data was in FY 14, and you are correct. Since FY 14 by law, by both state and federal law, we cannot ask a child any more about free and reduced as long as we participate in the CEP program.
Ms. Minz-Erb?
Sorry, I actually have a different question, but can you clarify that? Is what you're saying that these aren't accurate, or they're just issued by the state based on what information?
These percentages, my understanding, are issued by the state based on a 3-year rolling average. So what we should see is these averages now become 100%. So let's look at Mumford, for example, which is probably the easiest one on our list. The average that they're reporting to that is 9%. Probably is accurate. We'll see that they don't qualify for any funding. What we do know is that all of our students, we don't ask them to prove that they're eligible for free breakfast or free lunch. If you come to school, you're eligible for free breakfast or free lunch. So that the state will take that rolling average and report this. That's how they calculate this funding. I certainly can get all of you the detail of how they pull this average. But this is not, we don't collect from each student whether they actually qualify for free lunch or free breakfast.
Thank you. My question is on how we're communicating, how and if we're communicating preemptively with parents about leveling. It's come up with Holton in particular, just with parents being surprised as classes are being added, and then sort of the fear of kids having, switching, getting new teachers. So I'm wondering if we're doing any preemptive communication around, like, this could happen, and if so, this is what it would look like.
Not that I'm aware of. We take at least 3 counts a week from the time school starts. We don't wait a day or 2 days or a week to make a decision. When we find out that there really is a need because of the situation that we're in with the vacant positions that we have, we don't have to go find a teacher from another school and move that teacher. We have the ability to just assign that vacant position. But I don't know any advanced communication because we really fill that position as soon as we know it. But I will continue. I will say that because of this funding model, and also because of what we believe the instructional need is, and that's not my area, so I won't go too far down this path, we do focus on kindergarten through 3rd grade first, and 4th and 5th are second in line behind that. So Holton, for example, had an issue with the 5th grade, and we added a position there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Thank you.
Next item. The next item is item 8, board actions. 8.02, receive for action a resolution regarding Safe School Month. The resolution reads, whereas the goal of Richmond Public Schools is to create safe and nurturing schools in which there are increasing acts of cooperation, service, and caring. And whereas the violence many students witness in their communities and the media is mirrored in the inappropriate behavior demonstrated by some young people in our public schools and the availability of weapons and drugs in the community and in the schools. And whereas the problems of many young people originate prior to and outside of their public school experience and conflicts from the community too frequently are brought into our public schools, and whereas a growing number of young people come to the public schools without the personal values and support systems needed to develop and demonstrate attitudes conducive to academic success and personal responsibilities, and whereas the safety and nurturing of our young people are shared responsibilities, necessitating a partnership among the public schools, public support agencies, and community resources that the school board and the superintendent of Richmond Public Schools, along with other community agencies, members interested in our public schools, join together and pledge to work collaboratively to build a public school environment that is safe and conducive to learning, inclusive of the enforcement of strong and consistent disciplinary measures to modify student behavior. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the school board of the city of Richmond does hereby proclaim October 2017 as Safe Schools Month and encourages all schools and community members to join in the effort to ensure the safety and nurturing of our young people. Need a motion to approve that, Madam Chair?
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Owen and seconded by Mr. Barlow to approve the resolution recognizing Safe Schools Month. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Ms. Dorr? Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Mins-Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The next item is item 8.04, receive for action human resources actions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the school board, and Mr. Crane. My name is Rob Sargent. I am the manager of employee relations for the Human Resource Department, standing in for Mark Pazier, interim executive director of Human Resources, who cannot be in attendance tonight. I'm here to present the Human Resource Department report that you will provide tonight to include the two addendums. I will present a summary at this time. We make the following recommendations: 25 new hire nominations, 13 change of contract, 4 transfers, and 10 resignations. Beyond these are a number of miscellaneous actions. I would also like to bring attention to the last item on the agenda, as RPS has lost a valued employee. Mr. Krantz. Ultimate pass, excuse me, on October 9, 2017, Lamont Richard Booker, the 8310 Chamberlain Road, Richmond, Virginia, who was born June 7, 1969, served as an instructional assistant 3 and a former teacher with Richmond Public Schools from February 2012 until 2015. Mr. Booker had a kind heart. He joined us to work with our exceptional education students. He came with experience working with students at the Mending Fences LLC, an organization that reaches out to at-need students. He successfully met the challenge while working at Richmond Public Schools. He was a hard worker and very much appreciated in Martin Luther King Middle School. Mr. Booker would always utilize his time wisely and was known for his exemplary teaching qualities. He was friendly and will be missed by both the faculty and the students at Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Madam,
Mr. Young?
I do have an inquiry that's probably misspelled or closed regards to the addendum B specifically.
So we will vote on this matter after we come on. The next item.
Next item is 8.05, receive for action school board travel and district activity request. Madam Chair, we have one request from Ms. Mins-Earl to give to John Marshall High School. Funding to celebrate, funding to help family celebration event prior to an evening football game, and she is asking to donate $1,000 for kids' activities to include bounce houses, and food.
Need a motion?
I move that we approve Ms. Herb's request.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Orange and seconded by Ms. Dorr to approve the district activity request by Ms. Nins Herb, 3rd District. Any discussion? Dr. Sapini?
Although we haven't reviewed this yet, but recall one of the items that we do looking over on the bylaws is that when it's about 60 days prior to an election, that funds will not be able to be used. And so, because of that, I'll be voting no.
Ms. Cosby?
I'm sorry, okay. Can you further elaborate on that?
Basically, in the proposed, in the bylaws, as we are moving through the revisions to the policy section, you'll note in one of the articles that was presented during the last meeting, it wasn't last month, it was during the last meeting, adds language with respect to expenditures that that responds to some concerns regarding perception and restricting the expenditure of funds for any school board members who are, I guess, running in a general or special election. Members who, it also addresses members who are their terms are expiring or they're not going to run, and, you know, to respond to the concern of people not having money left, because we know we're in the middle of the fiscal year, when either a new candidate may come on board or a new board is seated. And so that language has been proposed. It has not yet been approved. And so before now, you had not had a policy stated on the books that covers that. But what Dr. Sapini is referencing is the proposed language. Again, we haven't had an opportunity to kind of talk through that, nor has it been approved yet.
This proposed, this proposed language, what's the historical context behind it?
The historical context is that just in general, there have been concerns regarding whether actual perception regarding the expenditure of funds from a board level for candidates who are running for office. I know that in previous board cycles, it's come up when, you know, I know, for example, when this board was seated, there were a lot of new members that were going to come on board. We knew that without a shadow of a doubt, because the people who were seated did not run again. And so it's been a question that's come up ever so often about what happens if a person who is in the seat and doesn't wish to run again spends all of their money or their allocation. And I say spend all of their money. Board members are allocated funds to use for constituent services, and that money, or professional development, and that money is allocated or approved by the board. So just, that's what I mean when I say spending money for the public's consumption. But as a board member, without any limiting language in the policy, you have the authority to spend that money, the allocation, or ask for approval of those funds up until your last day, so to speak. And then that does not leave necessarily an incoming board member with any funds that are allocated to their, for their use for professional development or constituent services. So just the historical purpose of it is there have been concerns that were raised recently. There have been concerns and questions that have come up throughout the years, and the policy has not been adjusted to meet that. But this is an attempt to address that concern via the policy, because absent that, we cannot limit the person from doing
Barlow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my perception is that there are two policy rationales that one might have here related to voting on this allocation. Well, ultimately three. I think the first one is whether there may be an appearance that these are in some way being associated with a campaign. So I have a point of inquiry for my colleague here about whether she intends for her name to be promoted at any point in relation to this or into this allocation.
No, I have no expectation of that.
Okay, great, thank you. The second, and perhaps the more important policy rationale for, I think, this allocation would be that it would be of use to the community at the high school in question. And can you give me some insight, give us all some insight about whether this has been a standard allocation that's been granted to the school for this purpose over the years, or what specifically these funds will be used for?
I can't answer whether it's been done over the years. This is actually the first time that I know of that they're doing an evening football game. So the funds will be used for a family event. So the goal at John Marshall, as I understand it from the crew that's organizing this, is that the students won't go home for homecoming. So they'll stay, they'll have dinner, their families will come, there'll be family games and activities happening that will lead then into the evening football game, which the students for this game are being allowed to go to for free. So it's sort of a full evening affair, and the idea is to keep the kids at the school so that they can enjoy the full evening. So they had asked about the possibility of getting some support for that, and I put that request in. I put it in over a month ago, and it just has gotten postponed to this meeting.
Thank you. And then I think the third policy issue at hand here is whether there will be sufficient funds for a successor or the permanent third district school board member to use throughout the course of the year. So this may be a question more appropriately addressed to the clerk. But can you give us an idea of what the balance will look like for the account moving forward?
I can confirm it later, but I believe it will be approximately $4,000 left.
Thank you. Assuming that's correct, then I'm going to support this vote.
Ms. Manzer?
That is correct. This is the first request that I've made this fiscal year.
I'm sorry. But I have, for the record, I do have concerns as well about the request of the funding. I support the concept of the use of the funds, but again, I too have concerns about the timing with the election being less than 30 days. So I cannot support this request as well. Call the question.
The motion was made by Ms. Owen, seconded by Ms. Dorr to approve the school board travel district activity request. Ms. Dorr? Yes. Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Manzer?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
No.
Dr. Sapini?
No.
Ms. Cosby?
No.
Ms. Page?
No.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
It is a tie, Madam Chair.
Need
Okay.
an opinion from our legal.
As we discussed earlier, because you have a vacancy, although the law does say it passes to your next meeting, it can, because you have a vacancy, it doesn't speak to that specifically, so I think this question passes to your next meeting when everyone is present, and at that particular time, you have another member that will be joining you, or as of tonight, it fails, the approval fails.
Next item,
Madam Chair.
Mr. Barlow.
Ms. Menzer, can you give us an idea of when this event will be occurring?
The event is on November 3rd or 4th, whichever is the Friday. I don't know which day.
and our next meeting is November 6th.
Madam Chair, I'd hate to belabor this any further, but in light of this, and given that it seems like it's a worthy cause, I was wondering if we may be able to get some board members to pitch in to help fund this, those who aren't in their district.
Ms. Dorr?
Yeah, I'd be happy to allocate $250 for us.
I'd be happy to allocate $250.
Ms. Owen? Oh, okay. Okay, so we have 2 board members who would like to donate their district funds, $250.
I can do 500 then, if you want to.
500 it is.
Okay. So we have 500 being donated by Ms. Barlow and 500 being donated by Ms. Dorr.
I believe we have to vote on that.
Yes.
All right, so I move that we accept Mr. Barlow and Ms. Dorr's most generous offer.
Your second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Owen and seconded by Ms. Dorr to accept the district funds donated by first district and second district, $500 apiece. Any discussion? All in favor? Call the question?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Erb?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Abstain.
Dr. Sapini?
No.
Ms. Cosby?
Abstain?
Ms. Page?
No.
Ms. Owen? Motion passes 4 yes, 2 abstentions, and 2 noes.
Next item?
The next item is item 8.06, receive for action a resolution recognizing School Bus Safety Week, which reads, whereas the safety of Virginia school-aged children are important to parents, family members, teachers, and citizens, and whereas approximately 15,500 school bus operators in the Commonwealth transport approximately 1 million students over 150 million miles throughout Virginia each year, making school bus safety crucial to the overall well-being of children and families, and whereas buses manufactured today are among the safest ever produced, including compartmentalization of student seating, ABS braking systems, and superior steel construction, and are designed with safety measures including bright colors, stop sign arms, and cross-view mirrors to avoid crashes and prevent injuries. And whereas school bus transportation employees should be recognized for their diligence in safely transporting these students, and whereas student transportation administrators, operators, and law enforcement personnel remain diligent in their efforts to ensure the safe and efficient transportation of students in Virginia on a daily basis, and their efforts are crucial to the operation of our schools. And whereas the highest standards of school bus safety are maintained through rigorous driver training and certification requirements, the use of vehicles that meet necessary safety requirements, and mandatory passenger safety training for students. Now therefore, the School Board of the City of Richmond does hereby join Governor Terrence R. McAuliffe in recognizing that October 16th through 20th, 2017 is School Bus Safety Week, and October 18th, 2017 as School Bus Transportation Employees Appreciation Day in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Need a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Barlow and seconded by Ms. Dorr to approve action for school bus safety week. Any discussion? Call the question?
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Miss Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Owen? Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Next item is new business.
Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We'd like to make an announcement that on Thursday, October the 19th, Spring 1 Million will be making an announcement at George Wood High School, kicking off that project. That's going to be at 10 a.m. on this Thursday. Thank you.
Okay. And I have two announcements. Again, we'd like to congratulate the appointment of Ms. Cheryl Burke to the 7th District School Board seat. And the oath of office will take place tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the school board room on the 17th floor. And then my next announcement, board members, please look at our meeting schedules regarding the ad hoc committees, meetings, and provide feedback to Ms. Wilson by the end of Friday, which is 27th. Because again, and also look at best practices. Look at surrounding localities and look at best practices as we consider a standing meeting day for our ad hoc committee meetings. Because if you notice, we have 12 meetings scheduled for the month of October that include our regular board meetings, discipline, in addition to the ad hoc meetings. So we also want to keep in mind, is this the best use of the administration's time? So again, please provide that feedback to Ms. Wilson by Friday. Ms. Dorr.
Because we didn't have an opportunity to discuss the Education Compact candidate selection process, I'd like to propose that anyone that has additional feedback on the second version, send that to Mrs. Wilson by this Friday. In particular, I would love your feedback on the qualifications you'd like for us to consider, the timeline, and the overall process.
We have no other announcement. And lead us into close.
Pursuant to the Personnel Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia in 1850 as amended, I move that the School Board of the City of Richmond convene in closed session 2, discuss prospective candidates for employment and assignment, and the assignment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of employees of the division, including consideration of the human resources agenda of this date and the superintendent vacancy.
Your second.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Dorr and seconded by Mr. Barlow. Roll call.
All in favor?
We all in favor? Any opposed? And then we have none. So now we close.